While diplomacy inched forward, unrest simmered beneath the empire's polished surface. The fragile truce brokered by Dr. Ilara Voss had sparked hope among the oppressed, but it also ignited fury among those who feared losing their grip on power. Radical factions within the empire saw her presence as a direct threat to their dominance. To them, peace was weakness, and cooperation was betrayal. Whispers turned into shouts, and soon rebellion brewed in the shadows. Underground networks of dissidents, long suppressed by imperial forces, began organizing openly for the first time in decades. They called themselves the Free Dawn, vowing to overthrow what they deemed a corrupt regime propped up by human interference. Posters bearing fiery slogans appeared overnight in cities across the empire. No peace with weakness. Earth lies. Empire dies. Restore true order. Ilara became a target almost immediately. Assassination attempts came fast and brutal. One night, as she left a meeting with scientists, an explosion rocked the streets outside her quarters. Shards of glass rained down, but Ilara emerged unscathed, shielded by quick-thinking guards. Another day, poison was slipped into her tea, a subtle act thwarted only because one loyal servant noticed the faint discoloration before she drank it. Despite these dangers, Ilara refused to retreat or retaliate. Instead, she doubled down on her mission, using every opportunity to expose the empire's injustices and rally support for change. She arranged secret broadcasts from Earth, sharing stories of resilience and unity with conquered worlds. These messages spread like wildfire, igniting acts of defiance wherever they reached. Farmers sabotaged supply lines meant for imperial troops. Factory workers slowed production. Even children scrawled anti-imperial graffiti on walls. Her actions infuriated the radicals, particularly General Lorthan, a ruthless commander infamous for crushing rebellions without mercy. He led the charge against Ilara, accusing her of orchestrating chaos. In public speeches, he branded her a traitor and vowed to restore order by any means necessary. His rhetoric resonated with some, but not everyone fell sway to fear. Even within the military, cracks formed. Captain Renai, a decorated officer stationed near the capital, grew disillusioned after witnessing atrocities committed under General Lorthan's orders. When she learned that Ilara had risked her life to deliver medicine to plague-stricken colonies abandoned by the Empire, something shifted inside her. Quietly, she began funneling intelligence to rebel cells, helping them evade Imperial patrols. Others followed suit, defecting in secret and swelling the ranks of the Free Dawn. Tensions reached a boiling point when rebels launched coordinated attacks on key Imperial outposts. Supply depots burned, communication hubs went dark, and entire fleets were grounded due to sabotage. Panic rippled through the council chambers as advisors scrambled to respond. Emperor Krylos, torn between maintaining control and embracing reform, found himself paralyzed by indecision. Meanwhile, Ilara remained steadfast. Though aware of the danger surrounding her, she continued visiting affected regions, offering aid and encouragement. Her calm demeanor inspired courage in those who doubted resistance could succeed. During one such visit, a young boy approached her, clutching a makeshift flag bearing Earth's symbol alongside his home planet's crest. "Will you help us win?" he asked, his voice trembling. Ilara knelt to meet his gaze, her expression soft yet resolute. "I'm already helping," she replied. "But the real victory will come when you believe you can stand together, not just against oppression, but for something greater." Her words traveled far beyond that moment, carried by those who heard them. Slowly, the galaxy began to awaken. Oppressed populations rose up, united by a shared dream of freedom. Even imperial citizens, disillusioned by years of greed and cruelty, joined the cause. As battles raged and alliances shifted, one truth became undeniable. Dr. Ilara Voss wasn't just negotiating peace, she was sparking revolution. And no matter how hard the Empire tried to extinguish the flames, they only burned brighter. The stage was set for a reckoning. The next morning, The Imperial Council reconvened in a smaller chamber reserved for private discussions. Emperor Krylos sat at the head of the table, his advisors arrayed around him like satellites orbiting a dying star. The atmosphere was tense, charged with whispers of Dr. Ilara Voss's strange arrival and her impossible demonstrations. Everyone wanted answers, but no one trusted her yet. Ilara entered the room calmly, flanked by two guards who seemed more ceremonial than necessary. She carried herself with quiet dignity, her hands clasped loosely in front of her. Her plain attire stood out starkly against the ornate surroundings, but it only added to her mystique. She wasn't here to impress them with wealth or grandeur. She was here to make them think. "Dr. Voss," began Admiral Terrell, a grizzled veteran known for his brutal campaigns, "your presentation yesterday raised many questions, but before we proceed further, prove to us that your claims aren't mere illusions." Ilara nodded as if expecting the demand. "Very well," she said simply, turning to face the massive chandelier hanging above the table, a glittering masterpiece of crystal and gold. She raised one hand ever so slightly. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the chandelier began to rise. The room erupted into murmurs of disbelief. The chandelier floated upward, spinning gently despite being firmly bolted to the ceiling moments earlier. No wires, no visible force. It simply hovered there, suspended by an unseen power. Even the Emperor leaned forward, his sharp eyes narrowing as he studied the phenomenon. "How are you doing this?" demanded Counselor Nimis, her voice tinged with both awe and suspicion. "This defies every law of physics." Ilara lowered her hand, and the chandelier settled back into place as though nothing had happened. "It's not magic," she replied evenly. "It's science. Advanced science. Science that humanity has developed over centuries, while focusing on survival and innovation. If you wish to learn more, you'll need to listen carefully." Her words silenced the room. The council members exchanged uneasy glances. They had always believed themselves superior, their empire untouchable. Yet now, faced with undeniable evidence of human ingenuity, cracks began to form in their arrogance. To shift the tone, Ilara decided to tell a story, a parable from Earth's history. "Once," she began, "there was a forest plagued by drought and despair. The animals fought each other for scraps of food and water, convinced they were doomed. But then, a small bird appeared. It didn't bring rain or riches. It brought wisdom. It taught the animals to work together, to share resources, and to find strength in unity. Slowly, the forest healed." She paused, letting the metaphor sink in. "Humanity is that bird," she continued. "We've learned the hard way what happens when division and greed take hold. Now we're offering you the chance to heal, not just your empire, but the galaxy itself." Her words struck a nerve. Some counselors scoffed, dismissing her speech as sentimental nonsense. Others, however, found themselves pondering deeper meanings. Could humanity truly offer something beyond raw power? Was cooperation really the key to survival? Emperor Krylos broke the silence. "And if we refuse your offer?" he asked, his voice low and measured. "What then?" Ilara met his gaze steadily. "Then you'll remain trapped in the cycle of fear and violence. You'll cling to power until it crumbles beneath you. And when that day comes, don't expect humanity to save you." Her response hung heavily in the air, leaving the council unsettled. For all their might, they couldn't deny the truth in her words, or the unsettling realization that humanity held cards they hadn't even begun to understand. As Ilara left the chamber, the Emperor stared after her, his mind racing. Who was this woman, and how had she managed to turn their world upside down in less than a day? One thing was certain. She was unlike anyone they'd ever encountered, and underestimating her could prove disastrous. The game was far from over. The days that followed were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Dr. Ilara Voss's intervention, the neutralizing shield, and her impassioned plea for peace had forced both sides to pause and reconsider their actions. For the first time in decades, the constant roar of warfare was replaced by an uneasy silence. It wasn't peace yet, but it was a beginning. Emperor Krylos, once a symbol of unyielding authority, found himself at a crossroads. His advisors clamored for retaliation against the rebels, urging him to crush the Free Dawn before they gained more ground. But Krylos hesitated, haunted by Ilara's words and the realization that his empire was crumbling under its own weight. Late one night, he summoned her to the palace gardens, a secluded space where fragrant blossoms bloomed under artificial stars. "You've changed everything," he said simply, his voice heavy with resignation. "I don't know if I can fix what's broken." Ilara stood beside him, her gaze steady. "You're not alone in this," she replied. "Change is hard, but it's also necessary. The question is whether you'll lead your people toward healing or let them tear themselves apart." Her quiet confidence gave him pause. After a long moment, Krylos made a decision that would alter the course of history. He announced his abdication, stepping down from the throne after centuries of rule. Instead of naming a successor, he proposed dissolving the empire entirely, transforming it into a democratic federation where all member worlds would have equal representation. It was a radical idea, one that shocked even those closest to him, but it sparked hope among the oppressed. Rebel leaders, initially skeptical, agreed to meet with imperial officials to draft a new charter. Ilara played a pivotal role in these negotiations, mediating discussions and ensuring fairness. She pushed for policies that prioritized autonomy, resource sharing, and reparations for conquered planets. Her influence extended beyond politics. She became a bridge between factions, fostering trust where there had only been hatred. As the provisional government took shape, Ilara stayed behind temporarily to oversee the transition. Her presence reassured many who feared betrayal or backsliding into tyranny. Even former enemies began to see her not as a threat, but as a guide, a steady hand steering them toward a brighter future. Stories of her compassion spread far and wide. When famine struck a remote colony, she personally arranged shipments of food and medical supplies. When disputes arose during negotiations, she listened patiently, finding common ground where none seemed possible. Her humility earned her admiration from allies and adversaries alike. People began referring to her not just as a diplomat, but as a beacon of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest times, unity was possible. Yet despite the accolades, Ilara remained humble. She rejected offers of titles or monuments, insisting that the credit belonged to those who chose peace over conflict. "I'm just one person," she often said. "What matters is what we build together." By the time Earth's delegation arrived to assist with reconstruction efforts, the galaxy had already begun to heal. Monuments dedicated to collaboration replaced statues of conquest. Schools taught lessons about cooperation instead of domination. And slowly, painfully, the scars of war began to fade. When Ilara finally returned to Earth, she left behind a legacy of hope. The galaxy remembered her not for her power or technology, but for her unwavering belief in humanity and in the potential for change. Under her guidance, the empire had fallen, but something better had risen in its place. For the first time in generations, the stars seemed a little brighter, and the future felt limitless. Late that night, the palace grew quiet. The grand halls, once bustling with activity, were now dimly lit and eerily still. Dr. Ilara Voss sat in her quarters, reviewing notes on her holopad. Despite the day's successes, she couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper lay beneath the surface of the empire's polished facade. Her instincts told her there was more to Emperor Krylos than met the eye, and she intended to find out. A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. When she opened it, she found an imperial attendant bowing respectfully. "Dr. Voss," he said quietly, "His Majesty requests your presence in the observation chamber." Ilara raised an eyebrow, but nodded, slipping on her coat before following him. They walked through winding corridors until they reached a secluded room overlooking the city below. The Emperor stood alone by the window, his crimson cape pooling around him like spilled blood. His expression was unreadable as he gazed out at the sprawling metropolis bathed in artificial light. "You summoned me?" Ilara asked, her tone neutral. Krylos turned to face her, his sharp eyes searching hers. For a moment, he hesitated, as though weighing whether to speak. Then, exhaling sharply, he gestured for her to join him at the window. "Tell me something, Dr. Voss," he began, his voice low and uncharacteristically vulnerable. "How does one lead when everything is falling apart?" It was not the question Ilara expected. She studied him carefully, noting the faint lines of exhaustion etched into his face. This wasn't the arrogant ruler who had greeted her days ago. This was a man burdened by secrets, and perhaps regret. "I've seen leaders rise and fall," she replied thoughtfully. "Some cling to power out of fear, while others adapt because they understand change is inevitable. Which kind are you, Your Majesty?" Her words struck a nerve. Krylos turned away, staring back at the cityscape. After a long pause, he confessed something no one else knew. The empire was crumbling from within. Internal factions plotted rebellion, resources dwindled faster than they could be replenished, and morale among his people was dangerously low. He admitted that he feared losing everything, that every decision he made lately felt like holding back a flood with his bare hands. Ilara listened without judgment, her gaze steady. When he finished, she spoke softly. "Fear can either paralyze or motivate. It depends on how you choose to act." She then shared a personal story about humanity's darkest days, how Earth had faced extinction-level crises yet emerged stronger because its people chose unity over despair. She didn't sugarcoat the struggles or downplay the sacrifices, but she emphasized the resilience born from hope and cooperation. As she spoke, Krylos seemed to relax slightly, his rigid posture softening. For the first time since their encounter, he looked at her not as an adversary, but as someone who understood the weight of leadership. "And what would you have me do?" he asked finally, his voice tinged with both skepticism and curiosity. "Step away from the edge," Ilara said firmly. "Stop clinging to control out of fear and start building bridges instead of walls. Your empire doesn't need another tyrant. It needs a leader willing to listen and evolve." Her words lingered in the air between them. Krylos didn't respond immediately, but the flicker of doubt in his eyes suggested her message had struck home. As she left the chamber, escorted back to her quarters, Ilara allowed herself a small smile. The Emperor wasn't ready to surrender, not yet, but tonight she had planted a seed of possibility. Perhaps, just perhaps, the galaxy's future rested not on domination, but on redemption. That evening, the Emperor hosted a formal dinner in honor of Dr. Ilara Voss, an event designed to test her resolve and perhaps uncover more about humanity's mysterious advancements. The banquet hall gleamed with polished marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and holographic displays of the Empire's greatest achievements. Servants moved silently between tables, offering delicacies from across the galaxy. Yet despite the opulence, the mood was tense. Every dish served carried layers of political subtext. Every glance exchanged held unspoken challenges. Ilara sat at the Emperor's right hand, dressed in the same modest attire she had worn all along. Her calm demeanor stood in stark contrast to the extravagance around her. While others indulged in rich foods and fine wines, she sipped water and nibbled lightly on bread. To some, this restraint seemed suspicious. To others, it felt oddly dignified. As the meal progressed, Admiral Terrell leaned forward, his voice cutting through the polite chatter. "Dr. Voss," he began, his tone laced with skepticism, "you speak of unity and cooperation, but your demonstrations suggest otherwise. Why should we trust you when you refuse to explain how you achieved such feats?" Ilara met his gaze without flinching. "Trust isn't given freely," she replied evenly. "It's earned, and I'm not here to lecture you on our methods. I'm here to show what's possible when survival becomes innovation." Counselor Nemes chimed in, her sharp eyes narrowing. "But surely you understand our position. You claim humanity has surpassed us in technology and science, yet until yesterday, We believed you were primitive. How do we know these claims aren't an elaborate bluff? Without hesitation, Ilara reached into her coat pocket and placed a small holocube onto the table. With a flick of her fingers, the cube activated, projecting vivid images into the air above the dining table. Scenes unfolded before their eyes. Earth transformed into a thriving utopia. Its skies filled with sleek ships powered by clean energy, its cities brimming with life and culture. There were videos of robots tending to fields, curing diseases, and even restoring ecosystems on barren moons. Most shocking of all were blueprints for technologies far beyond anything the Empire possessed. The room fell silent as the projections played out. Even the Emperor leaned back in his chair, visibly shaken. Finally, he spoke, his voice quieter than usual. If what you say is true, and if humanity truly possesses such knowledge, why share it now? What do you gain from helping us? Ilara smiled faintly, as though she'd anticipated the question. We gain peace, she said simply. For centuries, Earth has focused inward, rebuilding after near destruction. We chose progress over conquest because we understood that war only leads to ruin. Now, seeing the suffering across your empire, the rebellions, the resource shortages, the despair, we realized we couldn't stay silent any longer. Her words struck a chord. Some counselors shifted uncomfortably, while others whispered among themselves. For years, they had clung to power through fear and force, dismissing dissent as weakness. But Ilara painted a different picture, one where collaboration could heal wounds instead of deepening them. Still, distrust lingered. An older advisor named Lord Kale raised his glass mockingly. And what makes you think we won't simply take what you offer by force? After all, empires are built on domination, not charity. Ilara's expression hardened slightly, but her voice remained steady. Because taking isn't the same as understanding. Our advancements require more than just access. They demand wisdom and responsibility. Without those qualities, your empire would collapse under the weight of its own greed. Her response silenced the room once again. Emperor Krylos studied her carefully, weighing her words against everything he knew about leadership and survival. Here was a woman who spoke softly yet carried immense power, not just technological, but moral. She wasn't threatening them outright, but her implications were clear. Humanity held the keys to salvation, but only those willing to change deserved them. When the dinner ended, the council retired to debate further. As Ilara walked back to her quarters, escorted by imperial guards, she allowed herself a small smile. Seeds of doubt had been planted, and cracks were forming in the empire's foundation. Whether they chose to listen or resist remained to be seen. But one thing was certain. Humanity had already begun to reshape the galaxy. The game was far from over, but the first moves had been made. The following morning, the imperial palace buzzed with tension. Word had spread quickly among the council about Emperor Krylos' private meeting with Dr. Ilara Voss, and rumors swirled like wildfire. Some speculated she had manipulated him. Others whispered that her calm demeanor masked sinister intentions. Whatever the truth, one thing was clear. Humanity's envoy had begun to unsettle the Empire's foundations. Ilara remained unfazed by the whispers. She arrived at the council chamber precisely on time, her presence commanding attention without effort. As she took her seat, Admiral Terrell leaned forward, his tone dripping with suspicion. "Dr. Voss," he began, "last night's discussion has raised concerns. What exactly did you say to His Majesty?" Ilara met his gaze evenly. "I offered perspective," she replied simply. "Nothing more, nothing less." Her answer only deepened the unease in the room. The Emperor himself entered moments later, his expression unreadable as he settled into his throne. He wasted no time addressing the gathered advisors. "We will proceed with negotiations," he announced firmly, silencing murmurs of dissent. "But I require proof of humanity's sincerity before committing further." Ilara nodded, as if expecting this demand. Rising from her seat, she addressed the council. "If you seek proof, Allow me to provide it. Earth is willing to share its medical advancements, technologies capable of curing diseases and stabilizing your failing healthcare systems. These resources are yours for the taking, but with one condition. The Empire must cease all hostilities against weaker species immediately. The room erupted into heated debate. Some advisors argued that accepting aid from humans would make the Empire appear weak, while others saw it as a lifeline they couldn't afford to ignore. Counselor Nymus stood abruptly, her voice sharp. This reeks of manipulation. How do we know these cures aren't poisoned? Or worse, that they come with hidden strings attached? Ilara didn't flinch. Instead, she produced another holocube, projecting images of Earth's hospitals and clinics brimming with life. Videos showed alien refugees receiving treatment alongside humans, their ailments cured thanks to revolutionary nanotechnology. These innovations were created not for conquest, but for survival, she explained. They carry no malice, only hope. But if you refuse them out of pride, countless lives will suffer unnecessarily. Her words struck a chord. Even the most hardened skeptics found themselves hesitating. For years, the Empire had prioritized domination over compassion, leaving its citizens to endure shortages and suffering. Could they really turn away such an offer? After hours of deliberation, Emperor Krylos made his decision. "We accept your terms. For now," he declared, his voice heavy with resignation. "But understand this, Dr. Voss. Any betrayal on your part will be met with swift retaliation." Ilara inclined her head respectfully. "You have my word, Your Majesty. Humanity seeks peace, not conflict." With the agreement settled, Ilara arranged for Earth scientists to begin collaborating with Imperial engineers. Teams worked side by side, sharing knowledge and forging tentative bonds. Slowly, cracks in the Empire's facade began to show. Not just structural weaknesses, but glimpses of discontent among its people. Many citizens resented their leaders' greed and cruelty, longing for change. Rebel factions initially dismissed Ilara as a pawn of the Emperor, but her actions spoke louder than accusations. When supplies meant for oppressed populations were intercepted by Imperial forces, she rerouted shipments covertly, ensuring aid reached those in need. Acts of defiance inspired by her courage spread across conquered worlds, uniting disparate groups under a shared vision of freedom. Even within the ranks of the Empire, loyalty wavered. Officers disillusioned by decades of bloodshed began defecting, drawn to Ilara's promise of renewal. Her quiet strength became a beacon of hope, a reminder that even in darkness, light could prevail. As weeks passed, the galaxy watched closely. Was this truly the beginning of a new era, or merely the calm before another storm? Only time would tell. But one thing was certain. Dr. Ilara Voss had already begun to reshape the course of history, and the Empire, once unshakable, trembled under the weight of its own doubts. The grand hall of the Imperial Palace was designed to intimidate. Its towering ceilings shimmered with intricate gold filigree, and massive holographic displays projected images of the Empire's greatest victories. Planets conquered, enemies humiliated, civilizations brought to their knees. The air buzzed with quiet murmurs as dignitaries, generals, and advisors took their seats, eager to witness what they assumed would be a pathetic display of human weakness. Dr. Ilara Voss stood at the center of it all, completely unfazed. She had been led into the chamber by a squadron of heavily armed guards, their weapons gleaming ominously in the dim light. Yet she walked with steady steps, her posture relaxed but commanding. Her simple coat and boots seemed almost absurd compared to the opulent robes and armor surrounding her. Still, no one could look away. There was something magnetic about her, a quiet certainty that didn't waver, even under the weight of countless hostile stares. At the far end of the hall sat Emperor Krylos, his throne elevated high above the rest. His crimson cape cascaded down the steps like molten lava, and his sharp eyes glinted with both curiosity and disdain. He leaned forward slightly, studying Ilara as though trying to decipher a puzzle. "So," he began, his voice echoing through the vast room, You claim to represent humanity. Tell us why we should waste our time listening to you." Ilara turned to face him directly, meeting his gaze without hesitation. "Your time is valuable," she replied calmly. "And so is mine. But I believe there are things worth discussing. Things that could benefit not just Earth, but your empire as well." Her words were met with laughter from the gathered crowd. One advisor sneered loudly. "Benefit us? What could your primitive species possibly offer?" Instead of reacting defensively, Ilara smiled faintly, as if expecting such skepticism. Without another word, she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small device, a smooth metallic sphere no larger than her palm. She placed it gently on the floor between them. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a soft hum, the sphere expanded into a glowing orb that floated effortlessly into the air. Gasps rippled through the hall. The orb emitted a soft blue light, illuminating detailed projections of Earth's recent achievements. Sprawling cities powered entirely by renewable energy, lush forests regenerated on barren wastelands, breakthroughs in medicine curing diseases once thought incurable. Most astonishing of all were scenes of advanced technology, ships faster than anything the Empire possessed, machines capable of terraforming dead moons into thriving ecosystems, and artificial intelligence sophisticated enough to govern itself ethically. The Emperor's expression darkened as he watched. This wasn't supposed to be possible. Humans were meant to be relics of the past, clinging to survival while the Empire surged ahead. Yet here was undeniable proof that they had somehow surpassed expectations or hidden their progress for centuries. When the display faded, silence filled the room. Finally, an elderly counselor spoke up, his tone laced with suspicion. "Why show us this now? Why reveal yourselves after staying silent for so long?" Ilara's smile softened. "Because war benefits no one," she said simply. "We chose to focus on growth instead of conquest. But now, seeing the suffering across your empire, we realized it was time to step forward, not as enemies, but as allies." Her statement sent ripples of unease through the assembly. Allies? The idea was preposterous. Yet despite themselves, many found themselves intrigued. If humans truly possessed such knowledge and power, rejecting them outright might be a mistake. As the session drew to a close, Ilara added one final remark before leaving the hall. "You may doubt me, but remember this. My arrival here today proves that humanity has more to offer than you imagined. And if you refuse to listen, you'll never understand just how much." The doors closed behind her, leaving the council in stunned silence. Whatever they had expected from the human diplomat, it wasn't this. For the first time, doubt crept into their minds. Who exactly was Dr. Ilara Voss, and what other secrets did she carry? Only time would tell. Years passed, and the galaxy transformed in ways few could have imagined. The Galactic Federation, a testament to unity born from chaos, stood as a beacon of progress and cooperation. Worlds once divided by war now thrived together, sharing resources, knowledge, and dreams. Humanity, once dismissed as irrelevant, took its rightful place among the stars, not as conquerors, but as equals who had shown what was possible when courage met compassion. Dr. Ilara Voss returned to Earth after overseeing the Federation's early years, choosing a quiet life away from the spotlight. Yet her influence lingered everywhere she went. Monuments bearing her name dotted planets across the galaxy, though she had expressly forbidden such tributes. Children learned about her in schools, not just as a diplomat, but as a symbol of resilience and hope. Her story became legend, an ordinary woman who dared to challenge an empire and inspired millions to believe in something greater than themselves. Back on Earth, Ilara spent her days writing memoirs detailing her journey. She titled them simply, A Path Forward. In its pages, she recounted moments of fear, triumph, and doubt, emphasizing lessons learned along the way. "True strength lies not in power," she wrote, "but in our ability to lift each other up. The future isn't shaped by weapons or wealth. It's shaped by choices." Her words resonated deeply, sparking movements for change even within humanity itself. Inspired by her example, Earth embraced a new era of exploration and collaboration. Ships bearing the flags of dozens of united species ventured into uncharted regions of space, seeking not conquest but understanding. Scientists worked side by side with alien counterparts, unraveling mysteries of the universe that no single civilization could solve alone. Ilara herself rarely spoke publicly anymore, preferring solitude in her modest home overlooking Earth's oceans. But when reporters or dignitaries visited, hoping to capture wisdom from the woman who had changed the galaxy, she always offered the same advice. Never underestimate the power of kindness. A single act can ripple outward, touching lives you'll never meet. Though retired, Ilara remained a guiding light for future generations. Young diplomats studied her methods, marveling at how she had disarmed hostility with calm reason and turned enemies into allies through empathy. Engineers pored over records of Earth's advancements, inspired to push boundaries further. Even artists drew inspiration from her story, creating works that celebrated unity and perseverance. One day, decades after her historic mission, Ilara stood on a hill overlooking a bustling spaceport. Ships launched skyward, their trails painting streaks of light against the horizon. A young girl approached her, holding a small model of Ilara's original ship, the vessel that had defied Imperial defenses all those years ago. "Is this really yours?" the girl asked, her eyes wide with wonder. Ilara smiled gently, kneeling to meet her gaze. "It belongs to everyone now," she replied, "just like the stars." As the sun set behind her, casting golden hues across the landscape, Ilara felt a profound sense of peace. The galaxy was far from perfect, conflicts still arose, and challenges remained. But it was moving in the right direction. And she knew that as long as people chose hope over fear, the dream of a better tomorrow would endure. In the end, Dr. Ilara Voss wasn't remembered as a hero or savior. She was remembered as someone who reminded others of their own potential, for courage, for compassion, for change. And perhaps that was the greatest legacy of all. The stars shone brighter than ever, beckoning humanity and its allies toward infinite possibilities. Together, they reached farther than anyone had dreamed, and proved that even the smallest voice could echo across the cosmos. Tensions escalated to a fever pitch as the Free Dawn launched its boldest assault yet, a direct strike on the imperial capital itself. The once mighty city, gleaming with towers of gold and steel, descended into chaos overnight. Explosions rocked the skyline, sending plumes of smoke billowing into the air. Streets filled with panicked citizens fleeing the violence, while rebels clashed fiercely with imperial forces in every district. Inside the palace, Emperor Krylos paced furiously, his crimson cape trailing behind him like a streak of fire. His advisors shouted over one another, their voices blending into a cacophony of fear and desperation. "We must crush them now," bellowed General Lorthan, his face red with fury. "Every moment we delay gives them strength." But Krylos hesitated, his mind clouded by doubt. He had spent decades ruling through fear, yet now that same strategy seemed to be unraveling before his eyes. For the first time, he questioned whether brute force could truly restore order, or if it would only deepen the fractures tearing his empire apart. Amidst the pandemonium, Dr. Ilara Voss remained calm. She stood near a window overlooking the burning city, her expression somber but resolute. When an attendant approached to escort her to a secure bunker, she shook her head firmly. "I'm not leaving," she said simply. Her decision sent shockwaves through the room. Even the Emperor turned to stare at her, incredulous. "You think this is bravery?" snapped Counselor Nimis, her voice sharp with disdain. "It's suicide. If you stay here, you'll die alongside us." Ilara met her gaze evenly. "If I run now, everything I've worked for dies too. This isn't about me. It's about proving there's another way forward." Her words silenced the room momentarily. Then, without waiting for permission, she activated a hidden feature of her ship, The sleek vessel still docked in the palace hangar. A low hum reverberated through the building as a shimmering energy field expanded outward, enveloping the entire capital. Weapons froze mid-blast, drones plummeted harmlessly to the ground, and soldiers on both sides found themselves unable to fire their guns. For a moment, the world held its breath. What is this?" stammered Admiral Terrell, staring at his useless weapon in disbelief. "It's a shield," Ilara explained, stepping toward the group. "Not just any shield. It neutralizes all forms of aggression within its radius. No one can fight while it's active." General Lorthan lunged toward her, rage twisting his features. "You dare cripple our defenses. Do you realize what you've done?" "I stopped the killing," Ilara shot back, her voice firm. "Isn't that what you claim to want, to protect your people? Or is it only power you care about?" Her challenge struck deep, forcing everyone in the room to confront uncomfortable truths. Even Krylos looked shaken, his grip tightening on the edge of his throne. Outside, the fighting ceased as combatants lowered their weapons, confused and wary. Silence fell over the city, a fragile, trembling quiet. Seizing the moment, Ilara addressed the Emperor and rebel leaders via holo-transmission. Her image appeared across screens throughout the galaxy, her steady voice carrying weight despite the turmoil. "This war has gone on long enough," she declared. "How many more lives will you destroy chasing dominance? How much suffering must your people endure before you see the truth? Power isn't measured by conquest. It's defined by how you lift others up." Her words resonated deeply, cutting through layers of propaganda and fear. Rebels paused, considering her call for unity. Citizens trapped between factions dared to hope for peace. Even some Imperial officers began questioning their loyalty to a system built on oppression. As the transmission ended, Krylos rose slowly from his throne. His eyes locked onto Ilara's, searching for answers. "What do you propose we do now?" he asked quietly, his voice tinged with resignation. Ilara stepped closer, meeting him halfway. "Start listening," she replied. "To your people, to each other, and to the possibility that change doesn't have to mean destruction." In that moment, something shifted. The galaxy teetered on the brink of transformation, unsure whether it would fall into ruin or rise anew. But one thing was certain: Dr. Ilara Voss had forced them to choose, and the choice would define generations to come. In a galaxy torn apart by war, the Galactic Empire stood as an unstoppable force. For centuries, its massive fleets had crushed rebellions, annexed planets, and enforced strict control over countless species. Humanity, once part of Earth's now-forgotten Terran Federation, was considered irrelevant, a relic of history that had faded into obscurity after losing their place among the stars. The Empire saw humans as weak, primitive, and unworthy of attention. But one day, everything changed. It started with a transmission, an unexpected message from Earth, sent directly to the Imperial throne world. The signal was clear, unencrypted, and shockingly bold. A human woman introduced herself as Dr. Ilara Voss, a diplomat representing humanity. She requested an audience to negotiate peace between Earth and the Empire. At first, the Council dismissed her outright. Peace? With humans? It was laughable. Who did these fragile creatures think they were? Yet curiosity lingered. How had such a backward species managed to send a message across light years without detection? And why would they even bother reaching out when everyone knew resistance was futile? Some advisors suggested ignoring the request entirely, but others argued it might be worth investigating if only to mock them face to face. Eventually, the Emperor gave his approval. After all, what harm could come from indulging this ridiculous gesture? Days later, a small, sleek ship emerged near the edge of the Empire's territory. It wasn't like anything anyone had ever seen before. No visible engines, no energy signatures, no defensive systems. It simply glided through space as though defying the laws of physics. Imperial scanners failed to penetrate its hull, leaving analysts baffled. When the vessel entered orbit around the capital planet, not a single weapon fired in response. It was as if the ship existed outside the rules of reality. As the craft descended toward the landing platform, anticipation rippled through the crowds gathered below. Soldiers clad in gleaming armor lined the perimeter, their weapons trained on the mysterious visitor. Reporters hovered nearby, eager to document the spectacle. Finally, the ship touched down with a soft hum, its surface shimmering faintly under the twin suns. A moment passed, then another. Just as murmurs of impatience began to rise, the hatch opened. Out stepped Dr. Elara Voss. She was ordinary, tall yet unassuming. She wore simple clothing, a long coat draped over trousers and boots. Her dark hair framed her face neatly, and her expression held neither fear nor arrogance. Instead, she carried herself with quiet confidence, meeting the stares of thousands with calm indifference. There were no guards accompanying her, no entourage or ceremonial banners. Just her. One of the imperial officers barked a question. "Where are your soldiers? Your weapons?" Elara tilted her head slightly, her voice steady and clear. "I carry all I need within me." Her words hung in the air, sparking confusion and unease. Who was this woman? What kind of trickery was this? Despite their unease, the officials couldn't deny her audacity or her apparent lack of fear. Against all odds, she had arrived alone, unarmed, and unafraid. Something about her presence felt different, unsettling. As Elara was escorted toward the palace, strange occurrences began to unfold. Lights flickered along the pathway. Security drones froze midair before restarting erratically. Even the towering gates of the Imperial Citadel groaned as though straining against some invisible force. None of it made sense, and no one dared speak of it openly. But everyone noticed. By the time she reached the Grand Hall, whispers had spread throughout the Empire. This human woman, whoever she was unlike anything they'd encountered before. Whether she was a genius, a lunatic, or something else entirely remained to be seen. But one thing was certain. She had already captured their attention, and perhaps more than that, their imagination. What secrets did she hold? And why had humanity truly sent her here?